our world, men and women are divided. They're treated differently. Women in many parts of the world are not just second-class citizens, they may be third or fourth. In the United States, women are not treated equally. In the Western world, women are not treated equally. And that prior traditional dynamic is holding us back from applying feminine perspectives, feminine insights and intuitions into our methods of solutions generation. So we feel that it is necessary for these non-sustainable illusions of the past, the traditional tribal dynamics of society from the past, to be transcended if we want to be able to effectively meet the challenges, which are incredibly broad and complex and nuanced, of climate change resolution. Right now, the spiritual and the worldly dynamics of humanity are also separate, like oil and water in a salad dressing bottle. They've remained separate. They support each other in different ways, and the energies of one are often not applied to the intentions, goals, values, or process of the other in a very direct way. We feel that the grounding of the spiritual in our world will bring insight, understanding, wisdom, conscious discerning capacity that is otherwise outside of the mindsets of a very practical, capitalistic, and competitive current world economic and social and political process. So we feel that closing the gap between the spiritual and the worldly and the masculine and the feminine are absolute necessities. There is also a gap between past, present, and future that most human beings operate from. Traditionalists would want to keep the status quo. People who live in the present might not want to think about the future or understand the implications of how their polluting is going to affect the planet in the future, or how their choices are going to create more carbon in the air. They may not care about their carbon footprint. So this collapsing of past, present, and future into a more wise and conscious understanding of certainly the past brought us many useful inventions or understandings or capacities as a species. The present is allowing us to develop new capacities and understandings, and both of those are going to inform our future. And it's important that we be able to see all three of these things, these dimensions of perceived life process simultaneously and as a continuity, not to simply live in the now to the point where we kill the planet and destroy the potential for our children to have a future. We also would suggest that there are gaps in racial inequality, national and international inequality, economic, educational, and resource and cultural inequality that are keeping people from arriving at the local level as an individual with a complete understanding of just when, where, how, and why they are creating climate change, and when, where, how, and why they can solve for climate change within the area of life that they affect through their choices, and also how they can collaboratively work with the global community effectively and efficiently in order to generate global solutions that actually do work, do solve the problems that we're facing, reduce pollution, and enhance the creation of a sustainable future for humanity. So the micro and the macro, the local and the global, that is a gap that is not closed in the minds of many people. They want to look at life nationalistically, populistically, or politically in a biased or polarized or separatist, prejudiced way, and feel safer living life in that way. And in order to close these gaps, the process of fear and judgmentalness must be transcended. The dynamics of focusing on personal safety and illusory control in life as our value proposition and what's in it for me as our life process and investment strategy as individuals and as collectives must be that gap between those prior intentions and tendencies and the capacity to unconditionally love the planet and everybody else, we feel is a gap that must be closed. All of this these gaps can be closed through education, through modeling, through facilitation, and through healing the wounds that keep human beings from operating collectively in a harmonious way. So woundedness to health would be another gap that must be closed. Culturally, there are many nations and peoples that are so wounded, they're unwilling to work with other people or other nations in a definitive way, in the requisite way necessary to effect resolution of climate change. Engaging their hearts and minds and souls is absolutely necessary, and closing the gaps between heart, mind, and soul within these people is part of our intention, and we see as absolutely necessary to occur if we want humanity to work together collaboratively and collectively and consciously and wisely. So a lot of people have discontinuities in their understanding of cause and effect dynamics. They say human beings could not have caused climate change. It's a natural phenomenon, or it's an act of God, or it's something else that's bringing it about, and it has nothing to do with my choices as an individual or as a citizen of my nation. And so they would deny the cause and effect dynamics of our world. So closing that gap of understanding in a standardized way so that we can all get on the same page at the same time, sing from the same sheet of music at the same time in a well-orchestrated way, we see as necessary. And the last item in this diagram would be self and other. This misapprehension of I'm separate from you and you're separate from me, I have more value than you do, or I'm more important than you are, my pain and suffering and life process is more important than yours. It creates an incapacity to work together. This is foundational within the human life process. It's driven by safety and control strategies. It's driven by fear of death, abandonment, and pain and suffering and lack. And it's driven by the projected imaginings of those negative potentials in our futures. And it keeps us focused on our own personal situation and well-being to the exclusion of other people, other nations, other cultures, and other species. And all of this that we're listing here is basically, I'm not saying this is the totality of it. We have a more definitive expression than this. What you're seeing on the screen right now is what is motivating us to kill off the other species on the planet and to create global warming, and also not to deal with it. So if we can recognize that we have become entrained, entranced, and impassioned by the tribal process, of which these are just some of the dynamics of, then we can suggest that that tribal process cannot get us from where we are to where we need to be in terms of a sustainable life process for humanity. And if that's true, then we need to define a new life process for humanity. And of course, and a mechanism to implement it. Prototype, implement, and refine. And that's the social movement engine.